Disclaimer: the information contained in this production should not be used as a substitute for the advice of an appropriately qualified and licensed professional. The information provided is for informational and entertainment purposes only.
Hello, welcome back to Ask Sue and Kate, and this episode's going to be fun because we are going to be talking about marriage. My mom and I both celebrated a milestone anniversary. How many years did you celebrate?
50 years.
That's crazy.
That's a lot.
And Tim and I just hit our 10, so we're just 40 years behind, we got 40 years to go.
It's nothing. We'll be celebrating your 50 with you.
Yeah. Cryogenically frozen, exactly. Right? We'll just tap into you and wake you up. But before we start talking about marriage, we do have one question that came in this week, and I thought it was an interesting one, and so I will go ahead and ask this question, and we'll go ahead and answer it, and then we'll start talking about marriage. Before we get into this question, don't forget to thumbs up these videos, share them with your friends, and subscribe. Okay, here's the question. Dear Sue, I found your recent commentary on secrets interesting and would love your thoughts on a situation that I found myself in last week. About 3 years ago, a family from Mexico moved into my neighborhood, into a rental property 2 doors down from us. With children close in age, I got to know the mom and son a little bit, and they seemed nice enough, but for the most part, the family kept to themselves. About 6 weeks ago, I encountered the mom and son packing up the car, and she shared that they were returning to Mexico to live with her family. She was visibly upset, and by the bruises on her arms and face, I suspected abuse had something to do with it. Also, she shared that the father would not be joining them and would remain in the rental house, and that he was undocumented and living in the U.S. illegally. I got the sense that she was trying to warn me about him, but did not feel safe sharing anything further. The mom and son left that morning, and everything seemed normal until last week, when my husband heard shouting from the house late at night, followed by several vehicles racing away from the property. We don't want to jump to conclusions, but are concerned that something dangerous and or illegal could be going on and are unsure whether we should contact the authorities. We have no proof of evidence of anything, and until last week, the father was a quiet, respectful neighbor who never exhibited any cause for concern. The only thing we know for certain is that an undocumented immigrant is occupying the property. I would feel terrible to report and get the father in trouble if other suspicions are incorrect, and I would feel terrible for doing nothing if our suspicions were correct and something bad happened. Any thoughts or recommendations would be so appreciated, as we are struggling about how best to approach this complicated situation.
Well, this is a no-win situation. Several things crossed my mind as you were reading that. One is that while the wife and child were leaving with noticeable bruises, that she, in an unsolicited fashion, shared that her husband was undocumented. Mm-hmm. And so part of me wonders if that was a message.
Yeah, like them. Please call and get him
deported.
Yeah, or get him out of here, or whatever.
Have a consequence at any rate, rather, because that has nothing to do with, whether we know they're deported or not. But so that kind of seemed an interesting comment to make when they were leaving. So that was kind of my first thing, is that, was there a message in that? Was she saying to you that, and it could have been because she was really mad at him.
True.
If there was some sort of violence that happened in the home, which it sounds like there probably was, and good for her for scurrying out of there right away.
With her kids.
With her kids, exactly, to protect the kids. So she was doing all the right things at that moment. That other piece where there was the loud shouting and then cars squealing out of there, I think it would, if it was in my neighborhood, I would be really concerned about that as well. I would have recommended that you call the police right then, because now is all you have is this is what happened, weeks ago. And maybe by the time we're talking about this, maybe something else will have happened.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering if the next best time to make a complaint would be if something else happens, and because you're making a complaint directly to something that impacts you. And the authorities will take it from there. But this is terrible. I'm so sorry that this is happening in your neighborhood, because we love our neighborhoods and we love to feel safe in our neighborhoods. And I love that you don't just want to, out somebody just to out them, but that you're thinking of you and your family's safety. So I guess that would be my best guess, unless you just feel really unsafe, and then it is, then you take care of you, and then you call. If nothing else happens and you feel like it sort of has blown over, maybe do nothing. But the first most important thing is that you take care of yourselves, and so that you feel safe in your neighborhood.
I think what I'm getting out of your recommendation to her is that the next time there's a situation like something is happening out of the ordinary that's either loud or that, there's a disturbance, then that is the time where you call it while the action is taking place, so that the police can come and handle it right then and there, instead of calling days later and saying, oh, this is what happened. But I think it is good to have maybe a log of the things that have happened, so that way if the police want to ask questions or whatever, you can say, well, on this date, this happened, and I noticed this when his wife and kids were leaving, and these are obviously these are all just speculation and nothing is proven at this point, but it is nice to have some stuff, some stuff documented. That way, if there are questions, you can be very accurate in that, and it can help the police, and it can maybe help the family too, because who knows what's going on? Only they know. So, like you said, you got to protect your family. You have to feel safe. If you're in a situation where you feel like you or your kids could be in danger, that's definitely calls for police action or something to intervene and take care of that for you.
I love that you brought up the documentation. And so not just for this case, but anytime there is, if you are in a situation where there is some abuse going that you know of, or that's happening to you, it could be some sort of a harassment at work, anything where you feel like something's going on, document, because believe me, you will not remember exact dates and times. You will remember around it or about it, but not the specifics. So keeping a record is just really critical. So thank you for bringing that up. That's important.
It is. And I think to your point of Outwork, when I'm just going to say this real quickly. When I was going through some stuff at Trader Joe's, that's exactly what I did. I documented every single thing that was going on and that happened, everything that was said to me, the dates, and I had a notebook with several pages of documented dates and things that had happened. And therefore, when it was time for me to say goodbye, I had a lot of things that I could bring to the table in an email and mention all these things. So it helped me just protect me from anything that was said or going to be used to harm me. If I have this evidence and I have it logged, and the times and everything, that was very helpful. So if there's things going on at work, if you have anything, harassment, discrimination, any type of issue at work, definitely document all those things, because you never know when you'll need it, and when somebody is asking for proof and you can say, hey, look, I have this. So it is important to document in any situation.
Really important. Yeah, thank you so much for the question and for being so aware and so generous with your thoughts and trying to not jump to conclusions. So that's great.
I agree. She did not jump to conclusions. Okay, so we are transitioning now into some marriage talk and topic. This is just kind of like an impromptu discussion with my mother. And, because we're both celebrating our anniversaries within a week apart. It makes for a fun topic. So I'm actually headed out to San Diego to celebrate with Tim, and my parents are going to be here with Benson. But I guess I'll start by asking you a question.
Okay.
And you can give your cliche answer or try to think deeper, but what's the secret sauce to 50 years?
Okay, so the cliche is there is no secret sauce. I think if there is any, the one word that I would use is grit. It's not easy staying married. Just in 50 years, in 10 years, a lot of things happen. And when we get together as a couple and decide to marry, what we know absolutely is it's two people who came from two different environments, two different family experiences, and then you say I do, and then you're supposed to make it work. And so it takes, I think, negotiation and compromise are two really important words. I think getting over it is another really important part, because holding on to stuff and throwing it back 5 years later, it just doesn't serve you. It doesn't help anything. And I think being married to somebody, in my case, I'm married to somebody who's just a lovely human being, and he's a really good dad, and he was a really good provider, and he
is a goof.
He is the silliest man. I digress for a second. Well, I always heard that people marry your opposite sex parent.
Yeah.
So women marry their dad and men marry their mom. And so when Dad and I started dating, and I was thinking about this, and my dad was 5'4". My dad stopped school. He quit school in 10th grade because they were farmers and he had to help on the farm. He never watched a day of sports in his life. He was salt of the earth, just a very, very, very good man. And so I'd think, oh yeah, my boyfriend is 6'1". He is a college baseball player. He is a sports nut overall. He was just kind of a wild child. And so I just thought, man, that's not true. I'm not marrying my dad. Well, that's not what they're talking about.
Yeah.
My husband and my dad are the goofiest two men I know. They'll drive you crazy because they're silly, and my dad was just a silly guy. He was fun. He was so fun. He had a great laugh. So from that perspective, I really did marry my dad.
Yeah, and hard worker.
Hard worker.
Both Dad and Papa were hard workers, and being outside.
Yep.
They both, their jobs were outside, and they like to be outside, and they're, family men.
Yep,
so
both really good parents.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. And
So what do you think?
what do I think?
Back at you. What's your secret to 10 years?
Oh, well, I think for me, it's probably different than for you, because it's still, 10 years is a long time, but in the grand scheme of things, when you think of 50 and look back, I think for the first 10, it's a lot of compromise. It's a lot of figuring out what buttons you can push on each other and try not to do that, because in the beginning you kind of just, like, when you're first dating somebody, you just really just want to be flexible and do anything and everything they want, because you just are like, well, I love them and I don't care. And then after the years, you're like, well, no, I do care. I don't like doing that. I don't want to do that. And so you kind of figure out what each other's likes and dislikes are. And if there's a dislike that will cause problems, like, just don't go there, just leave it alone. And I think that's a big thing. And then I also think communication is huge. You really can't solve many issues, problems, good or bad, without communication, and you have to be on the same page. And I think raising children, having a house, having pets, all of those things, you really do need to have a lot of conversations around those and decide how you want to do this. And if in real time something's going on, for example, say Tim or I is upset with Benson about something and we're going to discipline him, and one of us decides to discipline him in a way that the other doesn't agree with, whether it be like, oh, I'm going to take away something from you, or we're going to turn off the TV, you're done watching it, and one of the other of us thinks, wow, that's a little too harsh. We have those conversations. We stop each other sometimes in the middle of discipline and say, hey, wait, like maybe it wasn't that big of a deal. Like, we don't need to go that hard. And then both of us sometimes will just say, oh yeah, you're right. Like that was a little intense. Like, we don't need to be that crazy, and it goes for anything and everything. It's just kind of like being able to have that support. And that if you have a disagreement, you're not going to blow up into a huge fight. It's not going to cause like your spouse to like be like, what in the world, how dare you talk to me like, or how dare you question my parenting? That's not it. Like, that's not going to get you anywhere. You need to be able to be like, oh, maybe I am doing something. Or you can say, you know what, I think this is appropriate, and we'll have this conversation later. Yeah. And this is what I think is okay. And then we can talk about it and say, well, this is where I'm coming from. And then when Tim and I both get together and we talk about our sides of each story, a lot of times we'll come to the same conclusion, or think like, okay, I see your side of things, and we agree. So, and not always, but I think communication's really big, and like you said, getting over things, it's harder when you're newer. I think you want to hold on to those like things that really just bother you, and I know you've told me before that the things that used to bother you a lot, you've just kind of you don't care anymore, or you're desensitized to it, or it's just not important. And I'm not there yet, because there are things that still like bother me, and there's stupid things too, like I'm trying to think of an example, but I know one. Tim picks his toenails on the couch. Oh, it is so irky, and I'm always like, Tim, stop picking your toes on the couch. And so it's like one of those things, I don't know if I'll ever get over that, because that grosses me out. but yeah, so.
No, that's all really true. I heard one time, and I just think this is so true. I mean, I don't know if it's true or not, but it seems like it's going to be true, is that the things, and this is kind of sad, actually. Yeah. The things that drive you crazy, you miss after your spouse is gone, or your partner is gone. So Dad sneezes louder than anybody in the world.
He does.
I mean, if you're listening to this from Delaware, you could hear him sneeze. And
same with when he throws up.
Oh, it's a loud thrower upper. And so I think of that sometimes. I think, okay, I need to just let this be and appreciate his loud sneezes, because he's here to sneeze loud. Yeah. But it's hard.
Yeah.
It still drives me crazy. I'm so snarky with those loud sneezes.
I mean, to be fair, they're very loud.
And he goes, well, I held back. What's it going to be like if you don't? I always picture like the back of the house blowing out or something. He goes, well, if I hold it in, it's going to blow my ears out. I mean, just.
Oh yeah, there's always excuses why they do these things.
But I think that, that's probably the truth is somewhere in the middle, where, I think what you do is you would just miss them. Yeah. And I think, after however long we're going to be married before one of us isn't here anymore, man, you get a space in your partner's life that is, big. It's big. And once where we are after 50 years is that we have, we were married for 11 years before we had kids. We had our 2 children. We raised our 2 children. We got 1.5 through college. We got 2 of them through marriage. We got 2 of them through having children. So we have grandchildren, and so we have, we've done all of those things while my husband worked really hard, and later on I worked a lot, but not while the kids were little, and now we're kind of cruising, and anything that was bone of contention. Raising kids sometimes, once in a while, I would be going, rah, 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 to kids. And your dad would tap me on the shoulder and say, come here for a minute. And he'd go, you're over the top. Not ugly like that.
Yeah.
But, you know, just, you know, the message was settle down.
Right.
It's too much.
Sometimes you need that, though, because you can get caught up in the action.
The heat of the moment.
Yeah. And so it is important to have that balance, I think,
Yep,
because
it
they
is.
can kind of rein you in. And that's the thing. You can't, I think another thing about key to marriage is you really can't, you can't get upset to the criticism that your spouse is giving you unless it's obviously absurd. Like if they're like, you're looking kind of fat, I'd be like, excuse you. That's rude, unless, you know, it's like a problem. I think that when your spouse is giving you criticism, or constructive criticism, I should say, it's the best thing to do is not to just jump to being defensive about it, because your spouse is somebody that's with you every day, that sees you the most, that knows who you are. So unless it's just like an outright mean criticism and it's not constructive, it's not something to like help you or balance you out, or, you know, something that needs to be discussed. I feel like that is something that you have to learn to overcome. If you're defensive anytime your spouse is saying, hey, like maybe you shouldn't do that, and you're just like, oh, how dare you? Don't tell me what to do. Like, I used to be like that. When I was younger, I used to really be defensive if I had anything critical said to me from an ex-boyfriend or anything. And then it changed. I think when I met Tim, it was just, there was a lot of respect between us. And I think I really trusted him, and I felt like his judgment and the things that he had to say were true. And it wasn't just something to benefit him or something just to make him be in control or be the power player or whatever. And so I felt I could relax, and I didn't have to be so like, is this person trying to control me, or are they trying to change who I am? And, you know, and that also comes with age, I think, because you mature and you realize like, this person is here to help me be a better person, and I'm here to help him be a better person. And I think it is, you got to kind of leave your ego at the door and let some of those things marinate in your mind and be like, maybe I do need to chill out a little bit, or maybe I can do better in this area of my life. And I just think for us, we have gotten better in 10 years. We've grown together. We've changed a lot, but we've done it together. And sometimes one of us is up here and one of us is down here, and then the other one kind of catches up, and then it's like this, and then, you know, you just kind of like, you grow together, and sometimes it's at a different pace, but it's important to do that. Otherwise, if only one of you is growing and the other one isn't, you're going to be left behind. And I think that's a lot of times what happens in divorce. You know, people just, they say they grow out of love, but I think it's really like one of them just didn't grow with the other. And
yeah, and that does happen. I think sometimes when one person has, or one of the couple has higher aspirations for finances, or for lifestyle, or for education, or, I mean, there's lots of things that drive people apart because they're not
aligned.
They're not aligned.
Yeah.
And I think that the truth is probably that not everyone should stay together.
I agree.
I have done quite a bit of marriage counseling, and there were just a handful of times, just a few times, but I was pretty sure right in the beginning I was really doing divorce counseling, because it was so contentious and so awful and so hurtful that I just couldn't see a remedy, because it was too far gone. And I think that's a good point, is when you're having trouble, to nip it in the bud, you know, get help, whether it's professional help or talking to a friend or whatever works for you. But don't just think it's going to get better on its own, because sometimes things don't. Sometimes things get worse. And there are times that you shouldn't stay together if there's any kind of abuse. You know, that and I know it's scary to leave. I know sometimes it feels impossible. Sometimes it is impossible to leave. But not you don't stay together just for the sake of staying together if there's any kind of abuse.
Yeah, I agree. And I was going to say abuse is in so many different forms. And there's that aspect of financial abuse where the partner that makes the money gives like an allowance, and they're very like, they track everything you do and you can't spend money on da-da-da. And like, that's a form of control of like keeping you from being able to leave, because, you know, you think, wow, how could someone leave if they have no way of making money? And they've kept them like, oh, I'm just going to say an example. It's typically men who are working, women who are staying home with the kids. Not always, but typically you see that where the money maker is saying, hey, you're going to stay home, raise the kids. I don't want you working. But that's actually, you know, and I understand that if that works for your family, that's great. I like to stay home with my kids, so I understand that.
It's not about the staying home. It's
right.
about the control.
Exactly, of saying you can't work or you shouldn't have a job. I want to be the provider, but then they're like, you have an allowance and you can't do this and you can't go out and you can't see your friends. Like, such a scary snowball, because it can start off thinking, oh, it's so sweet. Like, this person wants to take care of me and I get to stay home with my kids. And then you realize, you know, 3 years into it, you're like, well, I have $100 to last me this week. And he's saying I need to like supply the groceries and I have to do all this stuff. And I literally, I want to leave. Like, I want to escape because I'm feeling so suffocated. And it's just, yeah, that's scary.
Can I tell a story about
Sure.
somebody who was at the shelter when I worked there?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay, so I worked at Battered Women's Shelter, and we had, you know, lots of stories. And this one woman was completely controlled. She had no children, but she was completely controlled by her husband. He was very emotionally, psychologically, physically, financially, every kind of abuse you can think of. She was trapped. And one of the ways that he abused her was he would get home from working. She was not allowed to leave the house unless he was with her. He would come home from work. He would have a list of groceries and a certain amount of money. And he would say to her, here's the list, here's the money, go to the grocery store, you have 20 minutes, you get everything I want on it, bring me back the change. The problem was, he didn't give her enough money ever to buy everything on the list, and she couldn't do it in that amount of time. So it always gave him an excuse to set her straight. And,
oh my gosh.
There was always
makes me feel sick.
There was always physical punishment around it. And she had no money, she had no family. I mean, she really had no recourse. But this woman's awesome. She figured out that, and I got to give credit to her grocery cashier that she went to all the time, because the cashier kind of knew something was going on. So this woman started clipping coupons. And she would go to the store, she would buy the stuff and say, oh, I forgot to give you my coupon. This cashier would give her the change for the coupons back. She started squirreling away this money from the coupons, and she was eventually able to buy a bus ticket and get out of there. But how awful to have to, but I mean, how smart was she? I'm in awe. I am just in awe of people's resilience and people's, problem solving capabilities.
I know, it's true.
So
resourcefulness.
really
you have
resourceful. So, we talk about our marriages, and like we're some sort of models for it. We're only models for our own marriage, and that's all.
Yeah.
And I can say, there are things that I can recommend, certainly, that help. The things that we've talked about help. But not everybody's, married, both men and women, because men are in abusive relationships as well. Not everybody marries somebody who's kind and generous and
willing to do what it takes to like compromise.
Exactly. So, yeah, being controlled is, and I think to your point, when people are dating, if you could take the blinders off, you'd see it pretty early on, but it feels like it's romantic.
Yeah.
instead of controlling.
Exactly.
And so I think, being, just being really aware. I've known people who their friends said to them, run,
Yeah.
run. And they didn't, because the friends could see it.
Yeah, and they have to find out for themselves.
Yeah, and they did, so, yeah.
It's definitely, I want to take a step back because I think I don't want our words to get misconstrued in any way. Again, I want to just say that it's okay to be a parent, have a parent staying home and watching the kids. I know how expensive childcare is. It's insane. It actually makes more sense to me in my mind to have a parent stay at home and raise the children and watch them. And it's also okay to have a budget. Like if your significant other is making so much money, like, hey, we can only afford this much for this week. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a form of control that they know, like your example, where they know they have plenty of money in their account, but they're only giving the other person so little that they know that they can't do much with it other than just buy food for their family, because obviously you're going to support your children, you're going to take care of them. And it's different than budgeting and having to be lean. Trust me, I understand that right now more than I have in a long time. So that's not what we were trying to say. I just want to make sure that you guys are clear that we are speaking specifically to the people that are using financial abuse for people to control them. Budgeting is not part of that.
Yeah, no.
Because you have to budget, so.
Yeah, well, you don't have to, but you get in financial trouble if you
True.
don't budget sometimes. But no, I think to your point, absolutely, I stayed at home with you kids for a number of years, and it's really hard.
Yeah, it is.
It's hard. I was a little older when I had Katie, and I had this amazing career, but I really wanted to stay home with kids, and so. My husband was a single earner for a number of years, but I'll never be sorry. And I also want to say how lucky we were that we could do that. Some of it is because we're a little older and we were able to buy a house and do things that I think millennials and Gen X, is that the next one?
Z.
Gen Z is not able to... not necessarily able to do at this point. So
Yeah.
staying home though, it's a lovely thing to be able to be home with your kids.
I agree. And yeah, I think it's so true. It is, you're lucky if you can do that. If you have that option, because I know so many people have two jobs. I mean, Tim and I do. My job is YouTube. And so I'm lucky that my job is from working from home. But I do have to keep on top of myself and be like, I have a schedule, I have to do this, but it allows me to stay here. And I know so many people that are struggling and that have to do, not only do they have a full-time job, they have their side hustle, and then their spouse has a full-time job and they have their side hustle. And it's just crazy right now. It's a crazy time. And I know everyone's struggling. And so it's tough. But yeah, we kind of went off topic there, but that's okay. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about marriage? I feel like there's so much we could talk about.
Yeah.
But
things that are controversial to people, I think, and that is something to think about, is do you have separate checking accounts? Is your money separate?
oh yeah, that's a good point.
Do you take separate vacations? Do the boys go, the husband go out with the boys sometimes, and the woman or wife or partner or whatever go out, and they're same-sex couples, don't get me wrong, we're not
Any
excluding
relationship
just any
or marriage or
relationship.
whatever. We're talking about marriage specifically,
Yeah.
so any marriage.
So, I think that some of those things can be problematic. We choose to combine our money, and we have forever. My husband, this isn't a joke. If he
Starting it off like that.
Yeah. If he has 2 nickels, he'll spend 50 cents. If I have 2 nickels, I'll save 50 cents. So he's a spender, I'm a saver. That was contentious in the beginning of our marriage. Early on, he rode motorcycles, just for fun, off-road. and he wanted to buy this van so he could haul his motorcycle or a truck, I don't know what. And I said, we don't have any money. And he said, there's that $3,000. And I said, that's not money. And he goes, it's $3,000. I said, that's savings. Savings isn't money. And so he looks at me like I'm out of my mind. But he has since really understood what that means, is that there's money that you set aside if you can. Not everybody is able to do that. And so sometimes money can be contentious.
I think most of the time. I mean, you think, I hear all the time that one of the biggest number one problems in a marriage is financials.
Yes, that's the number one cause of divorce, actually.
Yeah, there's arguments. It's stressful. I'm not going to, don't get me wrong. Finances are so stressful. But I do think it really comes down to trust and to respecting the other partner's decision, like for you to save and he wants to spend, and it's like you do have to come to a happy medium, because Dad does like to spend, and I know that he would go shopping a lot, and I have never really remembered you being upset for him shopping or anything like that. And I would say,
because I didn't know.
That's true.
I wouldn't have been upset anyway.
I know. But I will say, like, for Tim and I'm much more the shopper, but I am super frugal too. So when you have to budget, like, you know, we've talked a little bit about, I just did a vlog with Tim, and we talked about his loss of a job for the past 7 months. So we've really had to budget and hold on to our finances a little tighter. And I am so proud of us, because we very rarely argued about money. And if anything, it was us both feeling the same stress, and it wasn't arguing with each other, but more just being frustrated with certain things that have happened, or, you know, like bills that have come up, and we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we have to pay this. And we've been, you know, and you see your account start to dwindle, and it's stressful. But I think if you guys are on the same page and you can really communicate and discuss finances, and it's not a taboo topic, and it's something that you can look at, and it's numbers, right? So you can just literally like print out your accounts, and you can look through them and see what are we spending our money on? Where do we need to cut back? What can we extend a little bit? And I think that's so important. And it's one of those, it doesn't have to be a contentious topic if you are open in the beginning. I think so many people don't do joint accounts because I think they are like, it's my money. And I get that if the other person is a spender, like you were saying, and they're going to spend all your money, or they're in severe debt. A lot of people get married and don't know their spouse is in severe debt. And then they're taking on that debt. Oh my gosh, I would feel so like hurt by that. That's just
betrayed.
Kind of, yeah,
You're
it's like
betrayed, or have a gambling problem, or
right.
Yeah.
Those are things that should be discussed, and they're embarrassing. They might be embarrassing. There might be something that you really just don't feel like you need it, but it's your partner. It's somebody you're marrying forever, for life. If you can't talk to them about your addictions or your issues, like, then what the heck are you doing getting married? Like, wait until you feel comfortable with the person that you can talk about anything with, like you having a baby with this person, and they're in the same room and they're seeing it all. Like, come on, you can talk about money. So I think that's it's definitely it's a hot topic, but I do think that if more people were just open about it and they talked about it, and they were willing to say, hey, you know what? Like, I really want to get this dress, and I have this much money, and look how much we've saved. It's like, go for it. Go shopping. Go get yourself something. And Tim and I were really smart, because we saved so much money, even though we could have spent so much money, but we didn't. And when he lost his job, it was like, okay, we have room to breathe. We are not having to, like, all of a sudden in a month have to go donate blood. I know so many people donate plasma to make extra money, and like, it's a great way to, if you're really in a bind and you're struggling and you need to make extra money and you have to go there. I totally get it. I would too. I would go there if I had to. But it's nice not to have to do that, not to feel so overwhelmed that you don't have a month's safety net. And like you said, not everybody can do that. And I do understand that. If you can do it, you should. Yeah. Don't spend every penny you get, every paycheck, because you want to have the new handbag or the Stanley Cup or whatever. It's not worth it.
Well, and I think as you were saying that, I was just thinking about how people are influenced by influencers.
Yeah.
And so, I've got to have that. And because I am really thrifty, really, really thrifty. I have clothes that I had probably in high school. I don't ever do fashion. Look at me. I don't ever do fashion trends. Kate bought more makeup by the time she was 13 than I bought in my entire life today.
We're opposites.
We're opposites. And so, I think being wise with the choices is helpful too. I have my, it's funny, just a side thing. My best friend worked in fashion forever. She worked for Coach. She worked for White House Black Market. She worked for Luxottica, how do you say that? It's an eyeglass company, but the high-end stuff. And so she was always so put together. Her hair looks good all the time. Her clothes always matched. She had to dress. Her nails were always done.
She's still like that.
I know, she's still like that. She looks beautiful all the time.
Yeah,
Saturday
she's always
night, she looks
done out.
beautiful.
I know,
she's
done
always
up
on
and
point. And I said to her one time, why do you hang out with me? I don't my clothes don't match. Well, no, my clothes match, but like I don't.
You're just comfy.
I am comfy. We are such opposites though
I know.
with that.
I know.
But I think we're the same in a lot of other things. It doesn't make you anything or mean anything about you if you buy something because you saw somebody else wear it on TV
TikTok.
or yeah. So I think that sometimes there's places, as you said, you can cut spending that might hurt your feelings a little bit in the moment, but later you go, oh, I'm so glad I didn't buy that.
No, it's so
already out of fashion, and I would have worn it 5 times.
I agree.
So that was a rant. Sorry.
No, I think it's important because it's true. I think there's something to be said about it's easy to be influenced. I've been influenced so many times, and I'm an influencer. Like I show groceries. At least I feel like I'm influencing for food. And it's a necessity, and there are some bags and things that come along with that. But the fact that a Stanley Cup, for example, those $50 water jugs. Now I see if you need a cup and you like the Stanley Cup, and it's a status symbol right now, and you want to get the cup, go for it. Like if that's something that's going to make you happy, if it's going to make you not be able to pay your car bill or your phone bill or whatever, then that's probably not a good decision. But it's when you start collecting these items and you have, 35 and it's becoming an obsession and it's a compulsion to buy these things. And then they are now all in the thrift stores, like all the thrift stores and, what are they called? Thrift stores, right?
Consignment shops or Goodwill and such.
Yeah. So all of those stores that resell used items, they're starting to see the Stanley Cups coming in, and it's kind of like you're not buying it to please yourself and you're not getting anything out of that other than, hey, look, I have a Stanley. And when people don't care, you're like, well, I don't care about this either now. That's kind of like, well, you just spent thousands of dollars collecting 35 of these, and now you can't even pay your rent and stuff. And I think that's just like irresponsible.
Yeah, every time you say Stanley Cup, I hear hockey. I have the hardest time with that Stanley Cup thing. We're hockey fans, and so Stanley Cup.
Sorry. I know.
No, but that's true. I mean, the other thing that this is, people's hysteria is an interesting thing. There was a picture popped up for whatever reason on my Google feed of people stand in line, with 10 at Costco with 10 of those giant toilet paper.
Oh, yeah.
Stand there. You remember when there was a run on the toilet paper?
How can we forget?
And I just think, wow, people are influenced to do things that I think that this same friend, I think she said that she still has 10 of those containers in her garage, those giant packages of toilet paper in her garage, because it just get on a roll or something.
Well, it's two-sided, right? Because I feel like both are creating a frenzy. It's a frenzy, and that was a frenzy of fear.
Yes.
Because people were fearful that they're going to run out of toilet paper. I don't know.
Why toilet paper?
We don't know.
And water.
I
Water was
think
too.
it's who knows? Who knows why it started, or if this was a Charmin conspiracy theory, and Charmin was like, let's make it seem like we're running out. Who knows? It was genius on the toilet paper maker's part. But,
yes.
I think there's like that fear frenzy where you're like, oh my gosh, resources are going to be depleted, so I need to like hoard everything. And I understand that, especially because your grandmother's generation went through the Depression. And I remember you telling me, we went to her house one time and she had all this gross food in Tupperware, and like weird Tupperware containers were like old butters and stuff. And I say gross food because she just like threw it all together and it looked like a mush. I would never eat it. I don't know how she ate it, but that's because she was in a what's the word? Scarcity mindset. So she had such a fear of losing or
wasting
anything. True, wasting too, because she was drying her paper towels and all that stuff. When I went to her house 30 years ago, and I didn't understand it at all, but then you go through things in your adult life like what we went through with the pandemic, or your significant other loses a job, and you start to realize like, yeah, it's probably good that, you save some things, but not go crazy. And then so I'm getting off topic, but I wanted to bring back to the point of the frenzy. So there's the frenzy of making sure that you don't you get your resources. And then there's also a frenzy of getting something that's in high demand that literally means nothing.
Yeah.
How many trends have we been through? There's been so many trends, and I feel like these companies are smart because I'll speak on Trader Joe's, for example. Those mini tote bags that just came out, TikTok created a frenzy over these bags. Does everybody need every color of the bag? No. Do I? No, but I got them because that's my job. I'm showing you guys what's new at Trader Joe's, and Trader Joe's knows what they're doing. Yeah. They can easily make enough supply for everybody, but if they did that, the demand would not be as hysterical as it was. And it's brands that do this are genius. They put out a limited quantity and they say it's a limited edition. Everybody goes nuts. People are staying overnight trying to get into the store and get it first. And it's insane. It's a bag. It's a water bottle. It's whatever. The only thing I think I can justify in that is electronics, like when the PlayStation came out and people were waiting overnight. I know they can't make a ton of those because it costs a lot of money to make. And I think just the way that they're made, it's very intricate and lots of things going on, the microchips and all that stuff. So I think there's certain things that I understand. Still wouldn't do it myself, but the things that are just inanimate objects that literally you don't need to have 10 of. Like nobody needs 10 bags. And
help me understand this too, because I don't get this. How come every time a new iPhone comes out, people get one? Aren't they like $1,000 or something?
Like $1,800 now.
See, I'm not dissing anybody that does this, but I don't understand it.
Yeah, we have a friend that does that,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Got to get the new phone. But I think it's a status thing. And also I think there's tech nerds, and I say that in a loving way. I'm not saying nerd in a bad way, because it's just like what you like. And there's people that really want the newest, latest, and greatest. It's faster, it has better picture, da 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 da. For me personally, I wouldn't do that. My phone is, I think it's a not 2011. My phone's like 3 or 4 generations old now, and I'm gonna use it until it just stops working, because I did that the last time. But there's these tech companies are smart because they put these cameras on here. I remember when the iPhone started coming out with the 3 cameras, the big ones, that was a symbol of, if you have the 3 cameras, you have the newest iPhone. And then they switched it again, and then it was like 3 cameras in a line, and then it was like 1 big camera. And so they do that on purpose so that people can whip out their phone and be like, ooh, is that the new one? And I don't know. It's just, if you got the money.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, and people pay that much for a Birkin bag or
those are $40,000.
But I mean, I guess it's whatever, if you can afford it. The thing is, I think, is if you splurge on something like that and you can't buy groceries, or pay your rent, or then that's not good. But I mean, if you can afford it, I guess,
Yeah.
it's not anybody's business actually, if you can afford it.
I
So,
agree. Well, and I think too, just like a little caveat from what you're saying is that sometimes, like when Tim and I were doing really well, and about a year ago, I'll say, we could buy anything, and I like to shop. I enjoy shopping. It's fun for me. It's always been something I've liked to do since I was little, and I could, and I had the money to shop. I didn't even have a budget. I just could go out and.
But you had also lots of money in savings.
Yes,
We're not spending.
That's what I'm saying. I had the money to shop,
Okay.
and I had excess money where it just didn't really matter, and but that's a really terrible mindset, and I'll tell you why. Because now, 7 months of not having money and having to really budget and not go shopping and just buy necessities, groceries, and things for my channel because that's how we make money, and that's what I do spend my money on. I have learned there is just so much clutter and crap in our house. And I'm like, why? Why did I buy all this stuff? Like, did that really make me happy? No, it's making me stressed out. I have clutter everywhere, and we're having a big garage sale because I just need to get rid of some of this stuff. And I feel like I needed to go through this process to truly kind of like rewire my brain a little bit and to just like rein it in a little and say, do you really need this? And, when we start making money again, I really hope that I don't go back to just, hey, I want this. And it is nice to go, and if I do need something, I need a new bathing suit, I can go to Target and get a bathing suit. That's where I go to my main bathing suits. If I want a really nice dress for, my birthday or something, I think those occasions, that's fine. But I don't need to go, to Michael's and spend $150 on craft supplies. And that's stuff that I really like to do, but it's just not necessary, and I don't have the space for it. And it actually makes me feel worse later on when I see all the clutter, and I'm like, why did I even get that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, it's a decision-making thing. And there are people who have shopping addictions.
Yes.
We knew a person years ago that that's what she did. She shopped. She would go to South Coast Plaza. Mm-hmm. She would shop all day long. She would buy scads of things and take them all back the next weekend. And
at least she took them back.
Well, the stores don't think that, though.
Well, I know.
That
That's
hurts
true.
The stores,
that
really.
Is true.
But it.
Oh no, South Coast Plaza is gonna crumble.
But I mean, the thing is, just it was such an addiction for her. Instead of gardening or, and again, you're right. They weren't going into debt because she was spending so much money. But that's really, sometimes people just spend their time spending money, and that's that we're so consumer driven.
I know. This is a whole other episode. We could be talking about this for 2 hours because it's interesting, and it has a chokehold on all of us. Let's be honest, my mom and I are not immune to the consumerist lifestyle.
No.
We both have our things that we enjoy and like to collect or buy. So by no means are we even close to being perfect with this. We live in America, and that's just kind of how we've been raised to think, and societal norms are you buy stuff and that's what you do. So
yes, and Michael's is a trap.
I know. Michael's is our weakness. I haven't stepped foot in that store in months because I was like, if I do that, I know it's going to get me. It's going to get me. So sometimes you just have to avoid it altogether. Yeah. But I think that's it for this episode. We covered a lot more than just marriage. We kind of went on a tangent, but that's what we do.
Yes, that makes it, that's how my brain thinks.
Yeah.
It's like a Pong game. Bing, bing, bing. It just goes from here to there. So
well, it's easy to have a conversation that just gets carried away with us.
Yes, it is. Always.
But we hope that you guys got some good info out of this, and if nothing more, just a little entertainment, a little time out of your day to just relax, decompress, and listen to us chat about every and anything.
Every and anything, and our marriages.
In our marriages, yes. And thank you to the person that wrote in the question.
Yes.
We always are looking for questions. So, hey, if you haven't written in and you have a question about a friend, a family member, a question for someone else, please write into the email that will be in the description box below. And then, of course, leave a comment. We would love to hear from you and see what you guys got out of this episode. And hopefully we see you guys next week. We post every week. So thanks so much for watching. We appreciate you all.
We do. And if you are just asking for a friend, that's just fine.
It is.
So we'll see you next time.
All right. Bye.